Welcome back everyone to Euro Fever Garage. I'm your host for today, Garrett. Donovan's behind the camera. Say hi, Donovan. He just said hi. And today we are gonna do a bit of a profile on my W126 1991 Mercedes S-Class. I've had this car about a year and a half now, I think, and I love it. I'm not in love with it. And I'm gonna talk about maybe sort of why. I think it is an S-Class. If someone is gonna get into old German luxury, you know, there's several choices, but in terms of Mercedes, and I'm talking luxury, I'm not talking E-Class, I'm not talking diesel. I think this is something, if you really want to, this is something you should consider. I've enjoyed my time having it, and we're gonna take it for a drive and sort of talk about the driving and ownership experience. So we're gonna take it on a drive, a little bit of highway, a little bit of neighborhood, talk about the driving experience, my ownership experience, sort of the need to knows if you're looking, and yeah, we'll take it for a spin. We're gonna pull onto the highway and chat about the highway characteristics, because clearly this is where the W126 is gonna shine. One thing I really love about the car is the lack of wind noise. So a ton of attention was paid to the car's aerodynamics, with just looking at it on the surface, it's a pretty upright, big sedan, square bodied, but you have a gigantic windscreen that is sort of wraparound. It has a much higher curve, a much stronger curve than a lot of modern cars. Now, I know modern cars aren't doing that for a reason, but at the time the wind tunnel testing for Mercedes was taken really seriously, and a new Edge Mustang SVT Cobra had a drag coefficient of about 0.37, but the drag coefficient of this is 0.31. So that tells you that so much work was put into this car, because it is upright and it is strong and it's not curvaceous, but there was still a lot of work put in to it being aerodynamic and efficient going down the road. One thing my car doesn't have is the SLS rear suspension. So the mineral oil, the Citroen-based system, Rolls-Royce used it, BMW licensed it, and Mercedes licensed it. This car doesn't have it, and so the ride is affected a little bit, but it's all soft suspension, long travel coils, and tons of tire. You know, you have 15-inch rim, and that pays dividend on things like expansion joints. It helps with rough pavement. It helps with road noise, and especially here in Texas, where the roads are just beaten to hell all the time. They're never ever glass smooth. You have more pothole protection than you would in something with a lower profile tire. But I mean, the highway characteristics, I would describe them as determined. This car is just gonna blast, it's gonna rocket down the road, high speed, and it's not gonna complain. It's not gonna, the engine doesn't ever feel stressed, the transmission never feels stressed. Obviously, we know that's the case because of the Autobahn, and when Germans are designing their cars, they're designing them for Germany. That's also why air conditioning on older German cars is garbage. Now, this has a new compressor in it, and the system's sort of been, I would say, revamped, and the air conditioning in this is fantastic. But a big problem with these is the air conditioning, because a hot day in Germany is going to be 80 degrees, maybe, and your drive is not going to be that long. Versus Texas, you know, it takes me 2 hours to go see my family out west, and on a 104 degree day, I need American air conditioning. I think you feel a lot of the German coming through in that respect, but the Germans weren't stupid in designing it, and they knew that the biggest market for this at the time was going to be America, and so it's comfortable, it's relaxed. The seats are sprung, they're not just foam, which I would argue that sprung seats are more comfortable than some foam seats. Now, if you're going to look at the Buicks and stuff from the 80s and 90s, those really pillowy, that's unbeatable. But compared to modern day cars, one of my biggest gripes is the seat comfort, and these are supportive, they're thick, and because you have springs, combining that with your body weight, they basically have, you know, a very primitive type of suspension, and so the harshness, the vibration, the jolts, they're absorbed. We're sitting here at a stoplight. I can't feel the engine running. I can hear it running, probably just the fans and the accessories, but it's just so quiet. It's so well insulated. There's someone next to me, and I can feel a bit of their bass, but I can't actually hear the music. And when I'm driving this car, in comparison to something like my G35, which is my commuter, I never ever really, I don't want to pull on, well, I can't pull on someone on the lights. There's also that. I don't get a racer boy feeling. I don't ever feel like I want to be the first off the line. I don't want to shoot gaps. I'm relaxed. This car just makes you basically say, I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there and it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. Versus in my G, I get that VQ boy feeling, and I want to hear the induction. I want to throw it around. Obviously, a sporty car is going to encourage you to be sporty, but the atmosphere of this car just is so relaxing, and you feel everything is completely adequate, and quite honestly, you feel better than all the other cars around you. And I don't know why, but when you're in it, you're just like, a Ferrari Roma could pass me and I'd be like, nice car, cool car. But I'm never like, I never feel anxious. I never feel envious. I just am relaxed, going where I'm going. I'm going to get there when I get there. I will say, out of all the cars I've owned, I think this is my 7th or 8th car. This is the car I get the most thumbs up in. I've been in some really interesting cars. I've driven a new S-Class. But in this, and I think a lot of it has to do with people not knowing, non-car people maybe think, oh, big old Mercedes sedan, how cool, it's got a big grille and chrome, and they're like, that's great. But in this, I'm always gratified when I drive this car because it just makes everyone kind of happy. Now, it's not like a Volkswagen Type 2 bus where people are like, yeah, that's so freaking cool, the mystery machine or whatever. Like, it's not gimmicky and tchotchke like in that way. People just seem to be like, they look at it and they're satisfied. They're like immediately happy about it. And it's because it's not really boisterous. I don't ever feel like I'm making a huge statement in this car. Even though for myself, I am really, but I don't think other people are looking at me like, oh my God, here comes some whack job in their, giant boat running down the road, taking up space they can't park. I just feel completely at peace with the world in this, and it makes people happy to see it, which makes me happy. I think that's one of the biggest points for me having a car is how does it make me feel, and how does it make other people feel when they see it. And I think I was yesterday I went to a Goodwill and got some chairs, and I pulled up and this guy just said, oh my God, that is a really cool car, that's great. And he wasn't saying it was a cool car because it was rare or because it was expensive, because it's not either of those things. He was saying it was cool just because it's pleasing to people, which is the first car I've ever owned that's done that. When I'm in my G, I feel like a racer boy asshole. I just do. Sitting from me to the star is probably 6 feet, if not 7 feet. As we're driving around these smaller neighborhood roads, it's a good time to talk about the fact that this car does not hide its weight. Now, it doesn't feel huge, and that has a lot to do with the fact that it's not that wide. It is very long, but I never feel like I'm having to like when you're in a big car and you think, when you're sitting in a chair and someone comes behind you, but you lean forward, but you don't move your chair, and you're like, Why did I do that? Because I didn't make the space any bigger for them. I never am in this car like moving around like, oh, it's too big. But I am very conscious of its weight. It feels heavy, it is heavy. So if I'm needing to pull out, make a maneuver, brake, I give myself probably 30% more reaction time in this car than I do in something else. Just because you're commanding several thousand pounds of steel, and it feels like you're doing that. So you feel like you have a responsibility to pilot it. Like we're going around this curve, and I'm doing it at 27 miles an hour. In my G, I would have done that at 45. Just because it leans, it pitches. It's not that I'm not confident in it. If something were to go wrong in this, I'm not sure I could correct it, just because of, you know, the snap back oversteer and everything, which can happen in something like this, especially since the majority of the weight's at the front and the rear end's really light. You'll see as we hit the brakes here, I don't know if you can tell, but I wasn't even hitting the brakes that hard, and it dove. In 80, up until 87, or there was a couple years in there pre-facelift, I think. You basically could get passive anti-squat. Basically, when you'd hit the gas, like I do now, I don't know if you're gonna be able to tell, but when I look out the mirror and I do that, I can only see road. I cannot see, I can see a couple lines behind me. But you could get this passive cam that when you hit that, the force of the car squatting would activate an anti-squat feature, and basically you wouldn't dip down like if you were in a speedboat and completely floored the throttle, you wouldn't dip down. I'd love to have that on this, but to do that you have to pull the rear subframe, and the rear subframe is several hundred pounds. I don't care about it that much. If I had more money, I think I'd do it, just because it probably would make the car less unwieldy to handle. But it's doable. It's fine. Huh! Minor detour. So we have a Mustang, gorgeous, with a boot on it. He knows what he has. And Rumphy's Rod Shop. Very cool. Another fun thing, this car's dual horns are working. So you have your city horn and your country horn. I'm thinking that this is your city horn. That's what I'm thinking. And then if I switch it again, it's that tingy sort of, when it happens, I think of old Toyotas actually. It's much louder. So in my mind, that's the country horn. You'll notice now our windows are all down. And this is a good segue to talk about reliability and maintenance, because we started hearing a woo 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 noise, and Donovan's sitting in the back and he said it might be drive shaft. So I don't hear it now. Sorry if the audio's shit, but this is what happens when you own a 32-year-old car. I'll talk to you about we can talk about maintenance and reliability. I mean, it's kind of like take everything with a grain of salt, because some things to consider with the W126. It's the most produced S-Class ever still. Well over 1 million units sold. So, parts, very easy to find. I have pulled parts from multiple S-Classes at junkyards. And this is before Mercedes did the biodegradable wiring harness. Big reason to choose this over a W140 is electronically, this car is pretty sound, and it's simple. It is OBD1, but it's simple. I'll talk you through the issues I've had. The only issue that has been a consistent problem is the fuel gauge. The fuel gauge does not work. It's pretty inaccurate down to about 1/3 to 1/4. At that point, I generally like to put gas in it. I have ran out of gas in this car 3 times. It serves me right because I'm not paying attention. Other than that, when I got it, it was fine. Now, I replaced the fuel pumps because when I ran out of gas the first time, it backfired and blew off a vacuum hose in the intake. I thought I wasn't getting fuel, it was just sucking in air and being too lean. So I replaced the fuel pumps. That's really easy. They're right under the rear seat, yeah, they're basically under the rear seat, behind the rear passenger wheel, and they're outside the car, and they bolt off, they bolt right on. They're not in the tank. It's great. The biggest expense for me has been the steering gearbox. Now, Mercedes source, I will never purchase another freaking thing from them again. I'm so mad. If y'all know who that is, it's that older guy. He runs a lot of parts and does a lot of like homemade stuff that you can buy. And I think by and large his stuff is probably okay, but they sell a how do I put this? A synthetic conversion kit for the W126, and the whole thing is like, he's saying, yeah, prolong the life of your system, put in a synthetic fluid, flush it, and you get the whole kit. You get the fluid, you get the filters, you get the thing to flush it with, and you flush the system. Well, I did that, and it killed every single seal in my steering gearbox to the point where it wouldn't even hold fluid. I'd start the car and it would pour out of the steering gearbox pinion. So the car, over time, the car became completely useless, and it was $1,300 for them just to reseal my gearbox. And I would have done it myself, but it's extremely difficult. So I will never purchase something from him again, because his, whatever it was, $40, $50, $60 kit cost me $1,500, thereabouts. And I will never order from him again because it killed my steering gearbox. So that was something I caused and had to pay for. The other thing on these is the fuel system. Generally, when they're parked and put up on blocks and ruined and fall apart, it's because this Bosch Jetronic fuel system is done, and people don't know how to fix it. Now, the owner before me engineered electronics and rebuilt it himself. So when you're shopping for a W126, you want all the history you can get on the fuel system. Has it been touched? What's the situation? How are the injectors? Because that's generally what kills these cars. Other than that, the only electronic issue I've ever had is the headlights, and I'm pretty sure it's a pinched wire that I just need to go up there, resolder, and wrap. But I only have high beams on both. On low beams, I only have driver's side. So there's a connection issue there. But overall, everything works. Day to day, what gets you is going to be plastics, it's going to be switches, it's going to be the materials that weren't engineered to last on the inside and the outside. Mechanically, it's pretty good. I mean, the engines are strong and they're fairly reliable. The transmissions are strong, the diffs are good. The diff on this is monstrous. Ultimately, by and large, they're reliable. It just hasn't been taken care of. Did the person before you, were they knowledgeable enough to perform the preventative maintenance? So now we're going to transition. Well, first we're going to get out and figure out what that noise might be. But we are going to have Donovan get in the driver's seat and sort of talk about his impressions and kind of how he feels in the car. So ready, 1, 2, 3, transition. The absolute best seat in the house, no question, is right here in the back seat. Some immediate standouts for me. The seat is very soft. These, just like the front, like I was talking about at the front, the seats in the car are all sprung. So it's a combination of horsehair, leather, some woven material, and then springs, like an old mattress. And the back seat specifically is really softly sprung. In that regard, it's not very good. We're on this smaller sort of B road, and it's just so sublimely comfortable. The harshness that, the car may be experiencing is not translating to me. The springs are soaking it up. Now I am going up and down, but it's just nice. It's so nice. I have the front seat here, the headrest put down and moved forward so I could have a little bit of leg room. Now these back seats do recline, and you'll see it reclines on that side and not this side. It literally within the last week broke, which pisses me off because I'd be even more comfortable. Regardless, it's a laid back position. I have this huge and squishy armrest, and everything you touch is so nice except the door panel. I I'm really surprised by sort of the plastic fantastic parts of this door panel. This armrest is rubberized. Door has a vinyl sort of ruching, which is nice enough. But the rest of the door panel is, I guess, and it could be age. It could be sort of just dried up. There's a little give to it, but it's definitely a scratchy plastic. But it's just, you just gotta sit back. The headrest is soft. It moves. If I wanted to be more upright, everything's just great back here. Something that is really interesting is that this was considered, you know, pretty much in America, the car to buy if you were gonna be driven around, besides maybe like a stretch limo. But considering that, it's pretty bare back here. I think it being a gray interior car adds to that. There were some beautiful interior colors for these, and the velour option trim is the one I would definitely want. I prefer cloth seats over leather. They breathe better, and I think they're more comfortable. They're not as easy to clean, but they're more comfortable, especially in this Texas heat. It's like 110 today. If you didn't have a car with tinted windows, the leather just, it's like baking hot. If it had velour seats, it'd be even more comfortable. In terms of what's available back here for me to deal with, I can recline my seat. I can heat my seat, 2-stage heating. I never use the second stage on the front or rear seats because it is so hot. It cooks you. It's so hot. Like, maybe if it was really, really frigid outside, the one is plenty. And my power windows. And then I have a massive ashtray, fully aluminum ashtray with a cigarette lighter. Perfect for my stogies. If I could recline, it'd be a little bit better, but I'm here. I'd probably, if it was a longer trip and I had a real chauffeur and real money, I'd move the seat all the way forward. I have a little footrest down here, which is just basically a mini ottoman. Again, it's pretty sparse. I think what was the attractive feature of this was that it's solid and all the materials are premium except for the door, and it's just comfortable. And to be fair, again, all things considered, what features were there to put back here at the time that aren't here? There aren't any. I'm not gonna get, now if I had some crazy conversion limo, I could put a TV back here and maybe a phone, tray tables, but all things considered at the time, this is fantastic. Another thing that's great for someone like me who is easily car sick, the visibility. It's fantastic. I have a relatively low belt line, all square windows, big quarter window, huge rear window. I can see everything. I have a 360 degree view of everything, and that's great as a driver, and it's really great as a passenger. Here it's like a fishbowl. It's great. I will say, in talking about liking but not loving this car, when you sit back here, I think it's now a sense of mission for the car, not gimmick. I put myself in the place of a really wealthy 80s, 90s doctor or stockbroker or something. You know, I'm buying this car, and if I'm being driven, it's fulfilling all of its criteria. But if we're talking today, 2023, I own the car to drive. I appreciate it and I respect it. It's like Jeremy Clarkson always talked about how he loves Ferraris and he respects Porsches, and that is how I feel about this car. I respect it, but I don't have passion for it, and I don't love it. And that takes me to what the equivalent options were, and you know, we're called Euro Fever Garage, but I'm an American through and through, and I love, regardless of all of their failings, American luxury cars from this era. And I think about having a 91 Cadillac Brougham sedan and acres of chrome and quilted leather and fake wood, but it's supposed to be like etched, and digital dash and all this stuff that really, in comparison, falls below this car because it's either pointless or bad quality. But I think the theater of it is so fulfilling for me, and there is no theater about this car. It's not boisterous, it's not exuberant, it's you know, the fact that it has a chrome grille on the front is probably the most flashy thing about it. It's a big grille, and a hood ornament, you know. But it's not theatrical. It's not passionate. You know, it's anti-Italian. It's Teutonic. It's just German, and people are attracted to that aspect of German automobiles, and I am to a degree too. I've owned several Mercedes and a Volkswagen, and I do in some regards like that, and I like when the Germans go crazy. Like, a dream car of mine is the Phaeton W12 or the Passat W8 wagon, and those do it better for me. But this specifically today, it doesn't do it for me in the same way something else might. But I respect it. And I think for the right person will love this car because they get their fix off of German engineering and German nerdiness and the idiosyncrasies of engineering-led Mercedes. Because that's where this came from. You know, famously the W140 was sort of the last breath of an engineering-run Mercedes. And this, you know, was, I think, this right here, I think, was the absolute peak, whereas the W140 was the last breath. And that doesn't do it for me. And it does it for some people, and I understand that. But regardless, I'm very comfortable. I'm going to direct my driver to take me home because it's time for my beauty rest. I'm glad we got to show y'all this car and our perspective and sort of how we differ, Donovan and I, on what we consider to be important and sort of how we're similar in that. I like that these cars are appreciated, and I hope it goes to someone who appreciates it, because it's gone this far. It's got 211,000 miles. It's 32 years old. It deserves to be taken care of. It wants to keep going, and it wants to keep fulfilling its mission in its German way. So I'm hoping it will, but I'm not the person for it. And that's okay. And I bought this car thinking I would be, and I'm not. And I'm completely cool with that because I've enjoyed having it. I've learned a lot about I've grown as a car enthusiast owning this car, and sort of the responsibility of being a custodian to something like this. And I think I've grown owning this car, but I'm ready for a new adventure, and I'm ready for something that's, you know, stupid, flashy, dumb, ridiculous. I'm ready for another thing like that. I'm off of my classic German stage, so we're glad y'all could come for a ride with me in the back. I might just sink into this leather and have my driver wake me up when we arrive. Drive on. That was a pretty brief overview of my experience with the W126. I really enjoy the car. I wouldn't say I'm in love with it. Actually, I'm going to say I don't love this car. I enjoy it. It makes me happy, but I don't anticipate it. I'm not at the edge of my seat. And I hope y'all enjoyed. I highly recommend this. If you're looking for something in this realm, the W126 is something to be looked at. They're cheap right now. Pretty easy to find one under 100,000 miles and 1 to 2 owners. Mine has 5 owners and 200,000 miles, but I enjoy the car. I recommend it. I hope this was insightful and informative, and we appreciate y'all watching. So we'll see you next time. Well, this we'll get on the road. Thanks. I know. Come
on, improv.
I know.
Well, you were gonna say well, weren't you?
That was a pretty